Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session of Balance in Life, where today we'll be talking about keeping kids physically active, so keeping them moving, keeping them engaged in learning, and keeping them safe online. Today, we have three presenters with us. We have Tara Brent, Jane Ball, and Chad Proudfoot, who are going to share some great resources and tips with us. As with all of these sessions, we will have an opportunity for questions and answers. We'll take those in the chat box, and at the end of all three presentations, we'll go to the chat box and share out some questions and answers. Happy to have you all joining us today, and we're going to go ahead and get started with Tara.
Good morning. Let me just get my screen ready. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tara Brent. I am a 4-H extension agent here in Virginia. And more importantly, I think in doing this part of the presentation is that I am a parent trying to telework, just like so many of us. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to keep your youth physically active, all while you're trying to work, help them with their schoolwork, do housework, all the things that we're having to do while we were at home during this time. So the first example I have, and all the photos that I'm using are my children. So you can see real life. You can easily get them moving while they're working. So this is an example of my son. He loves his exercise ball. He will jump all over the house on it. He will sit at the computer on it. So whether they are doing their schoolwork or they're playing a video game on the computer, this might be a great thing that you can have them use in the house while they are already working. So it doesn't have to be something formal. Maybe your child works better standing up. So maybe have them stand up while they're doing some of their work. So just moving while they're working. So my son is definitely more of an indoor child than my daughter. So I've been trying to think of ways like this to keep him moving while he's inside. Another thing is, think about some creative ways to get your kids outdoors. When we first started teleworking, my son wanted to go outside in little increments. So I said, okay, that'll be my break. Maybe go outside on the trampoline if you have one. Maybe go outside and play a simple game of catch. Or if you have a paved driveway or a parking lot where you live, maybe playing Foursquare or hopscotch. This is we purchased a stroller for our cats. And this is an example of my son walking one of the cats in our driveway. So this was just a creative way to get him outside. Also, he really likes using some of the tools that his dad has. So we needed a bush taken down. We gave him the tools and said, okay, have at it. You can just cut that bush down. So maybe think of some ways to get them to help you outside. Maybe it's not something they normally get to do, but because we have more time at home now, you can give them the chance to help. Maybe you have a state park or a local nature preserve. The state parks have started opening up for guests to go on the trails and things like that. So maybe that, you could take some time away, either during work or on a weekend, and get them just outside. He had found a metal detector, and he was determined to take that metal detector out on the beach. As you know, you can't take anything that you find at a state park, but for him, it was just fun to use it in that way. So take a hike or a walk, maybe even do a little scavenger hunt in nature. I'm going to share with all the attendees an example of one you could do that are easy things you might even have in the yard or near where you live. Some of the resources that I'm going to share, I'll give you an example of a nature scavenger hunt. Also, National 4-H has a great guide of short activities dealing with healthy living. Some of them are nutrition, some of them are getting kids active, but it's great small activities with easy materials that you could do with your children. I'm also going to share some examples of 4-H yoga for kids. These are yoga poses that are easy for youth to do. They're also easy for adults if you've never done yoga before. And I also found another lesson on, this is a science experiment on, do you run faster with or without shoes? It's a way to get kids outside. Maybe you have several children that they basically run a race and see if they're faster with or without their shoes on. So all those resources will be shared with you after this webinar. So I'm going to pass it over now to Jane.
Hey, good morning. So I'm going to be talking a little bit, once we get the screen up there, about how to keep your child engaged and learning at home. So before we begin talking about that, I want to talk a little bit about how we aren't in the same boat. So we all have things that create advantages, things that create disadvantages for us. So like any other activity in life, anything else we do, there are things that separate us. So none of us are going to experience this in the same way. We also didn't plan for this. So we didn't spend a lot of time preparing and getting ready for this. So it was just kind of a sudden transition. And transitions are hard for people for many different reasons. But this was a pretty jarring transition for most. Okay. And the third thing I want to kind of put out there is this is not homeschool. So if you know people that homeschool, this is not what homeschool looks like. You know, homeschool is planned and developed, and you know, there's different things in place that kind of help that be successful. I mean, I really enjoyed this little quote I found from a child, you know, talking about their parent getting confused. I know I've experienced that several times during our time at home. And then I also want to talk about what's appropriate. So you may or may not have been given work to complete. And I want you to think about when you're looking at that work, you know, what amount of time should your child be spending completing the work? So, you know, I have a second grader and I have a fifth grader. And they need different amounts of time to complete their work during the day. But this is kind of what would be developmentally appropriate on the lower end and the higher end. Okay. And then I want you to think about when you're learning with your child about emotional regulation. So if you are not regulated emotionally, then you cannot learn. So there's these things called executive functions. So that's kind of the way our brain works, the way we think, the way we regulate our body, and the way we regulate our emotions and our feelings. And if our body is dysregulated, if we haven't gotten that activity we need for the day, or if our emotions are dysregulated, we're upset, we're anxious, any of those things, then we cannot learn. So that's something to think about when your child is upset or feeling anxious, that's not a good time to approach this information. I also want you to remember that it's a weird time, and it's okay if you have many, many different feelings during this time. So you could feel, you know, happy or excited about this time, spending time with your children, and the next moment you may feel incredibly stressed. Or you could have all of these feelings about this all at once, and it's going to change rapidly for both you and your children, and that's okay. I know for my own children, there is a big difference between my introvert and my extrovert. So the introvert is thriving. He is so excited about this time at home. And the extrovert is just like, oh, you know, can I ride in the car while you go pick that up? Can I, you know, like she just wants to move, to see people. So it's different. It's also different based on ability. And so when you have kids that maybe have a learning disability or some kind of difference in the way they function or learn, this might feel like a relief to them. While your kid that typically really excels at school and gets a lot of praise at school, this may feel really sad to them. So it's going to be different for everyone. And then if you're a teacher, you know, how are you experiencing those feelings of missing your kids? And then managing your children's feelings as well. There's a lot there. Okay. And so I think we've kind of talked through that slide. We can move on to the next one. All right, so when you're setting up a learning plan for your child, there's some things that kind of helped us out. It has been kind of, I don't know, like just kind of a learning process for us over here. You know, I want you to always consider, you know, your child's learning needs. You know, when teachers have a group of students in the classroom, they are differentiating. So it's difficult to do that with work you're just handed, okay? You know, because you see the work and you think, okay, so my kid is going to just do all of these math problems or complete this writing assignment. And there may be steps in that process that aren't necessarily communicated to you. So just kind of, I want you to think about what your particular child needs and adapt to that, okay? There are things that are different for everyone, but there are also things that really help everyone to be successful just in general. Organization, routine, breaks, and then multisensory instruction. Multisensory instruction means that you are not just using one sense to learn the information. So if you are spelling, this could mean that you are tracing spelling words in a tray full of salt. If you are, you know, doing math, this may mean that you are using counters or that you are using different materials other than a worksheet to learn the math information. And then I want you also to think about what's important in this process. So if you feel like your child doesn't understand the material, is there another way for them to show you what they know? So for example, we were converting fractions, not my favorite thing, and not my child's favorite thing either. And you know, he was really struggling with that on paper, but then we went into the kitchen and made some cookies, and I would hand him different sizes of measuring cups and realize that he can convert the fractions. He just needed to be able to see it, and it needed to apply to an experience that's practical. And then, you know, is your child feeling socially and emotionally supported? And not just by you, but by the community around them, you know, by their friends, by, you know, if you have teachers that have contact, you know, are they feeling like they're getting the social and emotional support that they need? Okay, so a few things that you can try, and recognizing that every family is different and every child is different, you may want to consider trying a task list. So this worked for us after the first week where we felt a little haphazard and crazy. We developed sort of these short little lists, and I would hand one to each kid during the day, and they would check things off as they go. And we put things on there like make your bed, practice piano, but also, you know, read for 20 minutes or whatever. Little timers helped us out a lot here. We are kind of a more artistic family, and sometimes spaciness goes along with that. Sometimes we can get really sucked into an activity and completely lose track of time. So setting alarms for kids' Zoom meetings, that helped us a lot. Setting, you know, having kind of kitchen timers, sort of things that they could use the time, you know, for my one child that would read for 3 hours, and for the other that it's, you know, 20 laborious minutes getting him to read. It's different for each kid. Getting creative, so finding different ways, again, to access material, to access information, and ways that are enjoyable for you and your child. Because I always want you to consider what's best for you and your family. So when I'm thinking about this experience, I think about it a lot like advising someone how to learn would be like me telling you how to put an infant to sleep. So that's different for every parent and every child, because every child needs something different. So me telling you what we do here that brings us success may not be what brings you success. So trust your instincts, what you think is important, what you think your child can handle, what you can handle, while also trying to do all the activities you have to do for work. And then to manage other things that are going on in your life, like the anxiety of, you know, the current situation, or managing grief. All kinds of things come into play there. So this situation is going to look different for everyone. And consider a very balanced approach. So I want you to think about what works for your family in balancing your needs. So do you need to do math for a full week so that your child is retaining the math information that they learn? Do you need to spend more time with writing? Can you have shifts based on strengths between parents if you have a two-parent household? So, you know, can one parent do the reading with the child while the other one does math? And just kind of figuring out what works best for you. So all in all, just be flexible with yourself, be graceful with yourself. And I've provided a couple of links here for you all. I think Crystal's going to share those slides with you. Also reach out. It depends really by school district in Virginia, what each person in the school does. So a school counselor in one county is going to do something different than a school counselor in another county does. Same with school social workers or school psychologists. But if you need mental health support for your kid, do reach out to those people. We all have resources we can provide. And there's different things that different counties are doing to support students right now. But thank you. And just as all kids do well if they can, all parents do well if they can. So taking care of yourself is also taking care of your children. And sometimes it can be hard to remember that because we tend to kind of put our children's needs before our own most of the time. But if you are doing some sort of self-care activity for yourself, whether that is taking a nap, whether that is taking a walk, whether that is playing video games with one of your kids for a little bit, or painting or sewing, or whatever it is that you do that supports your mental health, do those things, because taking care of you means you're taking care of your kid. Okay.
Well, good morning. So my name is Chad Proudfoot, and I am a 4-H Extension Specialist with Virginia Cooperative Extension. And so I just wanted to talk for a couple of minutes about looking at safety with our kids when they're doing things where they're learning online. And I know that's been a really big topic of discussion in these last couple of months. And so it's one of the things that those of us in Extension, and especially 4-H, have been trying to help folks with, to kind of navigate some of these new things that we're dealing with that we hadn't thought about before. So one of the first things that I always like to tell folks is, when we're looking at that safety online and all of the things that we're looking at now, just, you know, don't be too overwhelmed, because there's a lot of stuff that's going on out there. And I know it can feel very overwhelming, and it can feel like this technology overload. And it feels like that for all of us. I was thinking about it this morning, and it's like, you know, it's been about 40 years of very slowly ramping up to the technology we have now, going from like those old Apple IIes up to where we've been with schools. And now in the last couple of months, we've just jet rocketed ahead. I had a friend of mine describe it as like that scene in Mel Brooks's movie Spaceballs, where they decide that hyperspeed is not fast enough, they need to go to ludicrous speed. And that's the thing, we've had to ramp it up so quickly. And so there are a lot of unknowns with things, and so it's okay to feel like it's too much, but yeah, try not to be overwhelmed with some of the stuff that's going on, because everybody by and large is really doing okay. I always recommend to folks, when you're looking for those online learning things, and whether it's tours of museums or art institutions, or just sites that provide curriculum and things like that, to try and look for sort of the safer sites that are out there. So if you're going to look for a virtual tour of someplace, sites that have that .edu or .gov are always pretty good, because that means that you know that that's either an educational institution or something that's like an official government site. And those are often the ones that, like public museums and everything, might often be a part of like a state or local government. The Smithsonian is a really good example. So their website is si.edu. That would take you to all of their museums and sites that they have actually around the world, as well as lots of learning opportunities and curriculum and all of those kinds of things. You can also look for what I think of as the really well-known places, because they normally have really good sites that are designed for learning, either for kids or adults. I put the Metropolitan Museum of Art on there as an example. That's just a really big one. But there's lots of those around the country, and you might also have state and regional ones of things that you know about that you could look to them for some learning resources. And I know that recently, with a lot of those places having to shut down, they've also moved to providing lots of resources on their websites. So that's always something that's good to look at too. I always recommend, when you're looking for some of these things, to try and find those, what I call official sites that are out there. And that's only because there's lots of other things, especially for big like public places and stuff. Sometimes there's other sites that are out there that sometimes they provide good resources, but they may not be the official site, so they're not necessarily monitored as well. And I know like national parks are a thing with this. So a national park website is going to come off of that nps.gov website. But lots of times there's other ones, like if you want to take a virtual tour of a park that either a private company or an individual has set something up. And those are the ones I always recommend looking at official sites. If you go off into the other ones, those are ones where if you have a chance, it may be good to click through it beforehand, before you do something with your child or any kids, just to make sure that it's sort of up to the standards for what you want, that it's things that you're looking for, that it's safe, that it's the right kind of material, that it's age appropriate for them, just to make sure those things that are out there like that. There's also several what I call designated kids sites that are out there that you can use. YouTube is a wonderful resource for many things, but YouTube has a lot of stuff on it it's for adults and for kids. There's just the whole world out there. And YouTube actually has a site called YouTube Kids, where you have to connect it through a parent's account, but it provides access then to only videos that would be age appropriate for children, and you can put in the parameters for things. It also allows the adult who has the main account to monitor anything that's been looked at, and it just provides a safer viewing environment for things with kids. PBS Kids is another one. If you go to the PBS website, they have an entire like separate part of their website that's just designated to youth learning. And so things like that are stuff that I recommend, that it gives you a little more at ease with how you're looking at some things. And then there's also several websites, and YouTube is one of them, that do have parental controls too, so that you can kind of set parameters. If you don't want to go just to a designated kids site, you can also look about setting the parameters for viewing or what comes up. And like I said, YouTube has a lot of stuff, but in the last few years, they've gotten much better, and most of the really large sites have gotten better about either restricting the content that's available or finding ways that you can filter and limit what gets through, so it's not just all open anymore, so that we can keep kids safe. And I know that even younger kids are really good with technology. My godson was 3 years old when he could unlock my phone and go to where the pictures were and like find pictures of himself. So I know they're really, really good at these things. And so that just provides a little bit more safety where you can kind of control that environment. We get a lot of questions, and we've got a lot of questions recently about safety with the online viewing platforms like Zoom that we're using, and with some other ones. And so I always just tell parents and others that generally these are very safe to use. Zoom is a very safe platform with most things. And there's a lot of safety controls that are put in it. And there's also been several updates within the last month where they've added even more safety controls. So if your son or daughter or any kids that you're working with are looking at doing things through these platforms, it's good to just sort of check out and even ask somebody who's hosting the meeting what safety controls that they're using. You know, it helps if the meetings are either you pre-register or there's a password to get in or a direct link. The waiting room feature where somebody has to admit everybody that comes in, so you make sure that there's nobody who shouldn't be there that gets in. When folks are already in the room, you can lock it down so nobody else can get in, or what they call that bombing kind of a thing. And then also we recommend with stuff with kids to disable the chat feature where you can chat privately so that all the chats have to go out to everybody. And that just helps to ensure that people aren't saying mean things to one another, or there's nothing that's going on that you're not aware of. And then finally, the last thing is that I encourage is it's okay to ask questions about a lot of these things. And if your kids are involved in something and they're using a lot of these online learning environments, it really is okay to ask whoever's putting those on about, you know, have they looked into the safety of this? What features are they using that way? What kind of sites are they using so they can explain it a little bit more? Because we all play a role in keeping kids safe when we're doing these things. And just because we're not in a face-to-face environment doesn't mean that we still don't want to provide safe and healthy and positive learning environments. I always caution people, it's okay to ask questions, but oftentimes the person or people who are putting that on have put a lot of work into it too. So we try not to be aggressive with it and, you know, to come out and say, well, I don't think that this is going to work, or, you know, something like that. But it's okay to say things like, well, can you tell me about, are you going to use passwords? Are you going to disable the chat and things like that? Because that promotes that healthy back and forth discussion with everybody that we hope really adds to that environment and helps to keep kids safe. So those are just some of the tips and tricks that we have. But again, I know everybody out there is working really hard, and they're, you know, everyone's doing the best that we can do. And so it is kind of a new world, and we're all learning as we go. But these are just some of the things that we think might help you along the way.
Thanks so much, Chad. And speaking of asking questions, we're gonna move into Q&A. There are already some questions in the chat box, and questions that you have for any of our presenters. We'd love to hear them in the chat, or any great tips or things that you found, resources would be welcome to share in the chat. Chad, I wanna thank you for reminding us to ask those questions. We had an opportunity a couple of weeks back to share some information, and I did, and it would have been shared out with this group, and I reached out and asked some questions about the opportunity, and the person I was asking was full of content knowledge and full of great subject matter knowledge, but the technology piece, when I asked some questions, didn't realize there were some things that they couldn't accommodate. And so it was important to ask the questions, and they were grateful that the questions were asked, because it wasn't a piece that they had thought through yet. And so it is important to ask those questions for lots of reasons. One of the questions, Jane, I'm gonna ask you this question, and if others have pieces to share, I'd love to hear that. One participant says, this is great information. I have a child with autism and I need additional ways to help engage him.
All right, so, you know, there's that saying, if you've met one child with autism, you've met one child with autism. So the needs are going to be incredibly different depending on the kid. Commonwealth Autism is a website, and they have a resource finder. So for the specific resource that you are looking for your child, they will have that in there. So you could type anything from horseback riding to speech therapy, anything that you are looking for, they have that. It's Commonwealth Autism. And I can send a link to Crystal, and she can send that out to everyone. And just also, you know, whatever your child needs, if they're a public school student or, you know, a private school student, you know, many of the special education teachers are still connecting and providing resources, and hopefully, you know, you're able to reach out to them for support. I know in my own county, I talk to parents all the time about specific needs with their kids. And if there's something specifically that you're looking for, you know, you're welcome to ask about that, and I'll help if I can.
Thank you so much. And so there are other ideas and things that are being shared in the chat, additional resources. There's some that we have been able to share now, and there will be others that I will include in an email that goes out to anyone who was registered for this session, along with the recording link. I put this resource up because it still is May Mental Health Awareness Month. We've done the sessions on resiliency as well as teen and adult mental health. And so I just put that there if that's a resource that people need. After this session, you will also receive an opportunity to provide us some feedback by way of survey. I would love to hear feedback so that we can share with our team, make sure we are on track and that we are addressing needs and topic areas that you have need of. And so that will come right afterwards. And again, we'll send the resources, the slides, as well as the recording link when that is available. As always, we invite you to join us again next week, same time. And we'll be talking about family finances during COVID-19, including stimulus and what you need to know about taxes, rent payments, mortgage payments, student loans, as well as ways to stretch your food dollars and some of the opportunities that are available or going to be available through the SNAP program. So stay tuned and look for that registration. At this time, I just want to say thank you so much to our speakers for bringing us such great resources. I appreciate you taking the time to be here and join us all on today. And any of the previous recordings can be found on the Virginia Cooperative Extension website. Thanks to everyone, and I hope you all have a great weekend and take care of yourselves. Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Have a great weekend.
Bye, thank you.